there's a good chance I'm not going to be here for my son. A long time ago I decided that if I wasn't going to be here, he was going to know that I tried as hard as I could. And that I never quit. Hi, my name is Jeremy Olson. I am a husband, father, an athlete, and a heart transplant recipient. I'm 3 years post-transplant. I've been working towards doing triathlons, and this year my goal is to do the Olympic distance at the Toronto Triathlon Festival. I am what's referred to as an ACHD patient, which stands for Adult Congenital Heart Disorder. I was born with a very complex heart disorder. Initially, they didn't think I'd live past 2. I had a surgery at 7 years old. They were able to restructure or reconfigure my heart. And that lasted throughout my teens. And then in my 20s, I had to have another surgery. And at the time, we thought that was gonna, or at least I thought that was gonna be it. We had accepted that I wasn't gonna be a runner, but I was gonna be around. I was gonna be alive and I was gonna live. I had my first atrial fib attack in my late 20s. I started getting treated, and right off the bat, they just said, "You're extremely lucky to have survived that." I recovered. You know, went back to school, changed my career a little bit, lived in Whistler after that, did a lot of mountain biking, downhill skiing, snowboarding, lived a pretty active life. I met my wife, Cheryl, and we just had a baby, and you know, everything was pretty normal. It was pretty fun. And then I walked into work one day, and it was like walking into an electric fence or a wall. I just got hit with another really, really big atrial fib attack. Rushed to the hospital, and at first I thought I'd recover again, and then really quickly became evident that I wasn't going to. So we found out that I wasn't gonna get better. There was no chance on December 24th, so Christmas Eve, and I was put on the transplant list on February 5th. Was off for a moment, or for a week or 2 with pneumonia in April, and then into the hospital permanently the end of May. My son was 16 months old at the time. And he would come and play in the hospital room, and he'd push around in a laundry cart and play on the beds. He first learned how to walk when my wife was holding up the iPad with FaceTime on it, and he started walking to get the iPad. And then one morning, I was woken up at 6 in the morning and said, "We have to go. You have to go to surgery. There's a heart." And so when I first got home, we have this set of 3 stairs that you have to walk up in our old house. And I couldn't get up the 3rd stair. So it was, you know, you've got a really, really long way to come back. Started walking with a walker, you know, around the house and to the end of the street. And then, you know, eventually with help, trying to get around the block. And I remember celebrating the first month, being able to get far enough to get to the park to see my son in the swings. It was pretty amazing having him there, because kids just look at the world with such simplicity. You know, there was a day when I was tired and feeling horrible, and cutting across a field instead of a baseball diamond kind of field, and he just grabbed my hand and said, "Daddy, just lie down and look at the sky with me." And he just flipped over and plunked down on the ground and stared up at the sky. So I lay down, and it was actually hard to get there, and just stared up at the sky with him. And it kind of gives you this realization that things are actually really don't have to be nearly as complicated as we make them. And then on the 1-year anniversary of my heart transplant, I was sitting at home and I was laid up on the couch and I felt terrible. My wife said, just basically kick me out of the house and said, "Go do something." And I've been playing around with running a little bit here and there, and I hadn't really done it. And then just that day started, it's like, okay, I'm going to see how far I can go. And the 1-year anniversary of my heart transplant was the first time in my life I ran 5K. I remember going in to see my cardiologist and starting to talk about rehab again. And my doctor said, "I want you to go see this really specific person named Rob Bertling." And she said, "Rob, I'll get you fit, and then I have a feeling that you guys will be able to have some real fun," and start pushing things.
My name is Rob Bertling. I'm a registered kinesiologist, and I work here at Toronto Rehab. And what we do is we work with patients that have had some type of cardiac events to try and get them back up to functional levels and as fit as they can possibly be.
The biggest hiccup I've had with transplant has been called cardiac allograft vasculopathy, which is full thickness narrowing of the vessels in the heart. It behaves a little bit like cholesterol, but you can't stint it because it's not one spot. It closes everything. It usually presents itself with heart transplant patients 10 to 15 years post-transplant. Occasionally it happens a lot faster, and unfortunately I'm part of that group. So after 1 year, I had lost 30%. And at a trajectory of 30% a year, you're not going to get very far. But I've got a son. And my wife has been incredibly supportive. And there was no way I was going to lie in a hospital bed. Sorry. There's no way I was going to lie in a hospital but wishing I had done something. And saying, why not? So I started to push harder. Until I came here. And Rob had found research that offered hope. That said, in cholesterol patients, there was proof or evidence that 300 minutes a week of high-level cardio had shown to stop or reverse cholesterol buildup. It had never been proven in transplant patients. I don't think it had ever been tried, but it was hope. So we embraced that, and despite the fact that I spent a lot of time on the floor and just curled up in a ball dealing with muscle pains and problems, and when I went back in for the test in the following year to figure out if the medication I was taking had done the trick, the whole thing had stopped. It's never happened with the medication, I'm told. The only real answer is exercise. I started triathlon in a large part because of muscle issues. I don't recover quickly. I take a lot of medications that bring a lot of muscle myalgias. So I found it really helpful to change exercises. So I tried running one day or walking at that point. I tried using a bike one day, and I tried swimming. And then I went to the Transplant Games and did all those 3 events in what's called a virtual triathlon. And I put them together and was able to do it. And then it became, okay, can I do this for real and really try it? I reached out to the local triathlon club and did some research. Could find little bits of stuff saying that transplant patients had done sprint triathlons before, sprint distance, but for my son I wanted to do something that aimed higher, basically. So I aimed to do the Toronto Triathlon Olympic distance in 2017. Was 3 weeks out and felt like I was there, and then I got meningitis. And instead of racing in the festival, I was in the hospital. I thought I was there, I thought I was ready, and this year's, it's a second chance. I've had a lot of second chances in my life, but if there's one thing that I can really focus on is that you just don't stop. The only person I'm quitting on is myself. I started looking at it a little bit different, whereas it's not just me that's out there pushing for something. There's so many different people that are pushing themselves for so many different reasons. And it really brings a lot of us together, and brings a lot of people hope, and brings a lot of people strength. My son, he saw it last year, and when I started doing the training this year, he wanted to come. So we signed him up for the kids program, which runs at the same time as the Burlington workouts. And he started coming, and he loves it. He's 4 years old and riding his bike without training wheels, and he's almost catching on the brakes sometimes. There's always one thing was different. And the one thing that really stands out is if I hadn't gone to Toronto Rehab. That place does incredible things. And, like anything else, they have some challenges with budgets and some shortfalls and things they want to do that they can't do. And it's a program that so many people rely on, and so many people wouldn't be doing as well as they are without. And being able to raise a little bit of money and either give something back or help grow their program. See if they can get more people to the point where they can go for a run.
We're also trying to bring cardiac rehab to as many people as possible. We're in Toronto, it's a great metropolis. If you live in the area, you can access a lot of medical resources. But for people who live outside of the GTA, sometimes those resources are not as available. So one of the big initiatives that we're doing right now is we're trying to develop a very robust online education platform. So if you live in Timmins or Sault Ste. Marie or any other small community that doesn't have access to cardiac rehab, you're going to be able to go online and at least get all the education and benefit from the cardiac rehab program.
This is something that I was told that wasn't really a possibility. But it is.
if I look back, I wouldn't have been without them.
I think that if I hadn't come here, I don't know where I'd be. And I wish there was a way to make sure that more people were able to do it too.
And my wife said to me that she thinks it's always better to run to something than away from it. And if you're running away from something, you're going to just drag. But if you have a goal and you can chase it, things can be different.